This episode's going to be a little off-center for the norm. Sort of, kind of, maybe. I mean, we're talking gaming, but we're not talking gaming. Okay, hang on. For the past bunch of weeks, I've been making racetracks. Cue intro music. Let's backtrack a little bit. One of the go-to games on my computer is the Trackmania series. It's this racing game that's kind of an MMO. I mean, there's multiple people on the track, and you can watch people pull ahead of you, or you can pull ahead of them, and they can't ram you. It's cool. One of the features has been this track builder. You start with this big blank patch of area and a toolbar that has every track piece they make. So you can make everything from a simple point-to-point race to these twisted monstrosities of a course. I've been tinkering in the canyon course, so I get to play with themed terrain as well. So I can put in mesas and creeks and lakes and put in nature features, add refineries, and you know, as much as I love nature trails, at night these pipelines light up the terrain in really cool ways. The track editor is actually really easy to use. Once you kind of get a handle on how the pieces are supposed to fit together, then it's really easy to use, really intuitive, and you see a lot of variety out there. When you jump into multiplayer rooms, you see a lot of tracks that are both frustrating and technically beautiful. I keep falling into rooms where the track maker seems to have been smoking something given to them by a caterpillar on a mushroom though. Technically demanding, wholly unintuitive. They even have what they call GPS on some courses, which are supposed to show you how to run the course, and even then it doesn't always help. Personally, I try to make organic runs. If you just follow the terrain or the occasional sign, you'll figure out how to get your way through it. I also love theming runs too, you know, hill climbs and descents, minimal pavement nature trails, big air and roller coaster runs. Yeah, I've been playing around a lot. Sometimes I'll start tinkering and then suddenly 3 hours later I'm going to have a really cool track to show for my efforts. I mean, that's how the entire roller coaster track pretty much came to be. But this isn't the only game that has an editor. Honestly, you don't really have to look too far. EverQuest 2 has a dungeon editor, Star Trek Online has the Foundry, City of Heroes had the Mission Architect, and how many games have a very flourishing mod community? Some games seem to solely exist on generated content from players, like, well, Trackmania. Then you can go back to the MUD, Muck, and Moo eras, where people would race to Wiz level so they could start making areas of their own. Then there are pure creation games, and I hesitate to call them actually games because, well, you know, Minecraft is obvious, along with Trove, where the designers basically say, here, have a blank canvas, have fun. What's really entertaining on these servers is some players have to find and craft all the materials to create with, and then what they create with those found materials. Then there are virtual hangouts too, like Second Life. You know, that still exists, and pretty much everything you see in virtual worlds was made by somebody who said something like, you know what this place needs? An Oreo cookie larger than my house. Related, I really miss greenies. We could even go to the archive and pick out a game like Lode Runner. Now, Lode Runner did have a level editor to it, but the thing is, there was really no reason to use it. The game already had like 300 different levels pre-built into the game, and even if you did use the level editor, the only way you could share it was to put it on a floppy disk and then hike it to your friend's house. Or the computer at your school, or the computer at your library, depending if you were lucky or not. But yet, we did it anyway. Why? The cynical bastard in me would really like an answer to this, because I know, it's really, really easy to get discouraged from doing anything creative because it might not work, especially in gaming. Failure in gaming is seen as being more evil than Sauron singing Justin Bieber songs. You're welcome. I mean, hell, many gamers would rather remove their own body parts with a rusty butter knife rather than try to do something new that might fail. And even if people do create things, most people don't share their works or even admit that they're doing it, so nobody will ever see their creations. Like I said, the only way people would see your Lode Runner screens is if you actually copied it onto disk to show it to other people, or you took a picture of your screen. So, what's the point? I might be a little biased, but I can think of a few, but I kind of need to set it up first. With this. Is the glass half full or half empty? Or is it half full of air? Or is it over-engineered for the volume of water? Or is it just about right and we should be happy to have a glass of clean water to drink? Or it could be a sentient being named Glenn. Nope, not Glenn. One thing about being creative, it forces you out of your safe place in your brain. One common trait among creative people is this ability to think of other possibilities and then the bravery of being wrong about them. Of course, I logically know the glass of water is not self-aware, but the possibility does spark ideas. Hell, it could even spark fan art of Glenn in the glass of water. Second thought, no fan art. The point is that I'm not just going with the first answer. I'm quickly throwing other alternatives into the mix, and I'm going to look at the situation differently. But I guess this really doesn't answer the initial question. Why would I make something that I can't share or won't show? Well, because tinkering brings insight. Let's go back to Canyon. I'm not the best driver in Canyon, I know this, and when I play some of the other insane tracks people make, I'm often reminded of this fact. But playing with the track editor and toying with the possibilities has taught me a lot of stuff. For example, this nature trail run, I wanted to put this super boost in a long ramp about mid-run, but the runoff from that went past where I wanted to keep the checkpoint. So I experimented with ramps and boosts for a while, and I found out that from the driver's side of things, if you let off the accelerator, you don't fly as far. It's a small lesson, but it's one that gives a little insight to the game mechanics. You know, I actually come to think that every track I've ever built has actually kind of taught me something. The roller coaster build, for example, it started because I wanted to show somebody on my live stream something I saw on another build, and I ended up learning about high-speed runs, boosts, and the physics of cars. Tinkering with the insides of things gives you more knowledge on how that thing works, more than any book could ever possibly give you. It just takes time and patience and the willingness not to give up at the first possible sign of failure. But it's not just about looking at things differently, it's also about acting on those insights. I want to shift to World of Tanks for just a moment here. Back in November they did this World of Tanks racing event, which I found incredibly fun. I'll give this concept a full show at a later time, but this simple technique that I used was just frustrating opponents to no end. This is actually an old paintball tactic that I adapted, and it worked really well, but let's be fair, it took a few games to dial it in, and it was a really specialized technique that required very specific circumstances, but when I saw the opportunity to adapt an old paintball technique and I tried it, it worked with a lot of success. But there's no guarantee that it would have worked, but I could not have known that until I tried it. I think this is why people are hesitant to be creative, or at least to share their creativity, because it's risky. Okay, in a game sense, if you're playing in an MMO and your group wipes because you wanted to try something new, well, it's on you and they're all going to yell at you. Or in a more social sense, let's say you put your game out there, you put your video out there, you put your mods out there, and everybody's like, oh, it sucks. Essentially, when you're being creative, you're putting your soul out there, naked to the world, and saying, bring it. If you've been on the internet for any amount of time, you already know this, but there are a lot of people who enjoy nothing more than screaming, fail, and then watching you give up. As passive-aggressive as this is going to come off, most of them probably can't think beyond, well, this is how it's always been done, so they snipe from dark corners of the net so other people get shot down so they can feel good about themselves. Either that or change is really so uncomfortable to them that they need to kill the creative spark rather than challenge their preconceived notions. The thing is, you don't have to change the world. Creative thinking can be as simple as being able to look at a problem differently and come up with an alternative solution. You don't need to constantly find new solutions, and a lot of times the old ones are perfectly fine, and sometimes you kind of have to admit that it's time to stop and go with the way things go, but some of the most creative people I've ever met in the world are not afraid to fail hundreds of times to get that one success that they know is out there. But it's that willingness. That's really the difference. Creativity is at once the most fragile and the most resilient thing on the planet because creativity is personal. It all comes from each individual person, and everybody on the planet has this drive, has this need to be creative. And because it's so personal, I mean, I could ask a dozen people why they create.
The reason I make videos about video games,
I love creating in-games and about games.
Why do I review comics and make my own stories?
You know, I make YouTube videos
because I love to entertain people, because I love to make them laugh.
I really couldn't find the games I used to play as a kid online.
I create things to make myself feel better.
There's something kind of magic and something really challenging about trying to take something that I've come up with in my head and try to translate it out to you so you can see what I saw.
I want to bring to life the crazy ideas I have in my head.
You get a voice. I mean, back in the days before the internet, if you wanted to have a voice, you had to go to broadcasting school and, you know, be a journalist, be like a radio or a TV presenter.
Well, if I'm being completely honest with you, it's probably because I'm a middle child on a lifelong quest to gain attention.
I want to share with the world my imagination and show that there are good comics out there worth checking out.
I love streaming my artwork and playing video games to return my appreciation for the community and what it can do.
I know that once I have produced an object, refined an object, repaired something, I'm going to feel better afterwards.
And a lot of the other games I used to play just didn't seem to get covered by anyone else.
You know, with YouTube, you can have an audience.
I mean, even if I can make just one person laugh, that that alone just makes it for me.
So I decided to make a show where I covered those games and basically shared those experiences I had as a kid with everyone else.
I'm gonna need my trailer if you need me.
I wanted to give my opinion on music in a different way than just making hateful YouTube comments. Plus, I really want the attention and subscribers. Why haven't you subscribed to me yet?!
Okay, close enough. But that's really the strength of it, isn't it? Everybody on the planet has this drive to create. It's just a matter of having the chutzpah to actually do it. You mean, you gotta get your hands dirty, you gotta tinker, you gotta experiment, you gotta play with things, you gotta, even if you make things that nobody ever sees, we are being handed the tools to do this. Why are we not grabbing this with both hands and running with it? Personally speaking, if I come off looking like or sounding like an idiot, but I learned something from the experience, good enough.